So how do you get along with younger coworkers? And I think that's a question that a lot of us have when we're working at a place and we find ourselves working at a company where there are a majority of the employees, where a majority of the employees are a lot younger or a bit younger than we are. So in this episode of Over 50 TV, what I want to do is I want to offer you some tips, some suggestions, some things that I know from having worked with hundreds of employees, people that work for me, and what I observed, and of course from some of the people that I speak to almost on a daily basis about getting along and about being effective and being successful at your job. I'm going to give you some tips, and that's all up next right here on Over 50 TV. Hi, welcome back to Over 50 TV. My name is Reyes, and as you can see, I am outdoors today, and I purposely decided yesterday that I was going to get outside because I've been inside in my office for way too long, and I wanted to get out and enjoy the weather. I know that today, I heard anyway, today was going to be a great day. It's going to be in the 70s, almost in the 80s, so yeah, this is a good day. You might be hearing the birds. Hopefully they won't drown out what I'm going to be offering you today. But listen, before I go on, I want to mention I do have a free cover letter, what I call a cover letter that hiring managers can't resist. And you can get that cover letter in the description box of this video. Please excuse me for cutting into this video, but I got back to my office and I realized that I forgot to mention that in the description box of this video, you're going to see a link to a free career aptitude test. And that test is courtesy of Career Fitter. Their test, it's 60 questions. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. Now, as I mentioned, there is a link to the free test in the description box. So let's talk about how you can get along with younger coworkers. And number one, what I want to suggest is to be yourself. You want to just be who you are. You can't change for somebody else, and you shouldn't change for somebody else. And I know people, older workers who will go into a job and now all of a sudden they're deciding that they're going to start looking a little bit more hip. That's the word, I guess, that I don't know if that word is even used now, but they decide they're going to go in, they're going to start dressing like their coworkers. They're going to try to look like their coworkers, and they're going to act like their coworkers. And you know what? That's not who they are. And when you aren't who you are, you're not authentic. And when you're not authentic, people can see right through it. So that would be my first suggestion, is to be who you are. Now, the other thing that I think is important when you're working with younger coworkers is always to be respectful. Expect them to respect you. If you respect them, more often than not, they will respect you. And I know that sometimes that doesn't go that way. Sometimes a person who's younger will look at you, and you're always going to have the person in a group who will not necessarily be respectful. But my thing is this: even if they're not respectful, I would be respectful back. But if they're continuing to be disrespectful, I would definitely say, may I talk to you, may I speak with you, and then let them know how you feel. But do it one-on-one. Don't do it in a group. Don't try to humiliate them in any way whatsoever. But I believe it's so important to be respectful, and for them, that other person, that other group, those younger coworkers, to respect you. Now, a third thing that I find so fascinating is when we are working with younger workers, one thing that we always hear is that they don't work as hard as we do. They don't show up on time. They don't show up some days. They take off. They don't have my work ethic. I've been working for X amount of years, decades, and these younger people aren't working like I work. Well, you know what? If you're working for a company, even though it will be unfair that you are carrying, or you feel that you're carrying the burden, the majority of the workload, well, you know what? I'll tell you this. What I have found is you just have to accept that fact. Now, going to the boss or the manager and complaining, or going to a coworker or coworkers and complaining about that person, it's not going to help. It's just not going to help at all. And if you're working for somebody else, if you're working for a company, if you decided that's what you want to do, well, you know what? You're going to have to accept the fact that there are other people who are not going to have your work ethic. They're not going to work as hard as you. They're not going to show up every single day. And that's just something that you're going to have to accept. And I find it very hard, but it is really the only way to find some kind of peace at a job. Now, the other thing is, don't go back in history. And when I say that, when you're working with somebody, don't say, well, this is how we used to do it, or this is how I believe it should be done. This is the best way to get it done. You know what? Make your suggestions about something that you see, but don't go back in history and say, yeah, back in 1900, this is how we did it. I mean, it does come across that way to a younger person. They're gonna look at you and roll their eyes, and they're gonna think this person thinks they know everything, and it just doesn't go. It doesn't serve you well to go back in history, because what it does is it actually does draw attention to the fact that you're a bit older or a lot older, and there's no reason to go back in history. Really, truly, actually nobody wants to hear about what you did or what you accomplished way back when. The other thing I believe is so important and critical is to keep improving your skills. You want to be sure that what you're doing or where you're working, my goal has always been to be in that top 20% of people who produce. If you could be in the top 10%, I guess that would be okay. But that minimum, I do think you want to be at 20%. And I'm not saying don't be in the top, again, in the top 10 or the top 1% or 5%. But be sure that you're at least in the top percentage in terms of your productivity. I find that to be so important when you're working at a company. Now, the other thing is this. If you're working somewhere and you're working with a lot of younger people, and you find that they are always asking you, hey, why don't you come out with us? Why don't you come out and, we're gonna go out and have a drink, or we're gonna participate in this activity. Make that a decision that you wanna make. Don't go because you feel you got to go to fit in, and don't go because you feel like, well, I want to get along with these people, so I better do it. Only go to a side event, a special event, an extracurricular event if you really feel that you want to do it. I do know many workers, and being here at Over 50 TV, one of the things that I do get is a lot of messages, a lot of comments, and I've had people comment and say, I always feel pressured. I feel like I've got to go out with these guys or these gals, and I just don't want to do it. And then what happens is they become miserable. But what also could happen too is they go out and they're putting themselves in an unprofessional environment, and then when you go back to work the next day, then what happens is the person or the people, the younger people that you're working for, may not look at you as the professional that you've been. Your actions have shown to be as a professional person who gets a job done. So for me, if you want to go out for a drink, if you want to go out and maybe you want to go with the group on a hike or a run or whatever, if you feel good, if you want to do it, do it. But when you go out, like I say, don't feel pressured to be there. Well, listen, that's all the tips I've got for you today, and how to work with younger coworkers. And again, to me, the 5 or 6 items that I've just outlined for you are really the best way to do it. If you've got any suggestions or questions, I'd love to hear from you. Now, the other thing too, I want to just remind you, I do have my free cover letter, and I always say it's a cover letter that hiring managers can't resist. And you can get a link to that cover letter in the description box. Well, that's all I got for you today, folks. I want to thank you for watching me here in the park system, as I said, and it's just maybe a nice place to go relax early in an early morning. Well, that's all I got. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah.